present in a nuclear reactor are radioactive. What does it mean? It means that it emits radiation. So just like an electric light bulb would create heat or light, but this time the radiation is not only invisible, but there's no taste and no smell. Now you can be contaminated by an outside source, but you can also be contaminated because you've either inhaled or ingested radioactive particles through, for instance, contaminated foods. Now the effects of on health are going to actually vary depending on two different factors: on the amount of radiation, of course, that you're exposed to, but also the type of radiation. But the most important factor is definitely the amount of radiation. Why? Because the more energy your body is exposed to, the more your cells are going to take in all of that energy, the greater the biological damage. So it can create, for instance, it can reduce your body's ability to fight certain infections, so it acts as an immunodepression. It can also cause skin lesions, or also a temporary or even permanent infertility, and also congenital malformations. Now, during a nuclear explosion, what actually happens is that you have this radioactive substances that are released in the air, and then there's what we call a radioactive fallout. So those particles are going to come back down towards the earth, and it takes about 15 minutes to do so. And you have one of those substances is radioactive iodine, and some organs are actually much more sensitive to this radioactive iodine. The most sensitive is what we call the thyroid gland, and this is why we say that when we're highly exposed to radiation, the most common side effect is unfortunately thyroid cancer.
Okay, so you can take these potassium iodine tablets and they can reduce the chances of developing thyroid cancer, but it does have to be taken according to a specific protocol, doesn't it?
That's right. As you said earlier, many people in Europe, of course, many neighboring countries of Ukraine are trying to get their hands on these tablets because what they do is that they give this ability to the thyroid to kind of saturate the thyroid and make sure none of these particles can actually go into this organ. And France has just announced that it's about to send 2.5 million doses of these tablets to Ukraine by next Thursday. But you have to understand that you have to take it in a very specific time frame. So it said that optimal protection, you need to take it 2 hours before the actual onset of the radioactive iodine. Then the effectiveness goes down to 50% if you take it 6 hours later. And if you take it even later than that, then you can do more harm than good to your own organism with many side effects. So, for instance, a burning mouth and throat, also severe headaches, vomiting, diarrhea, but also stomach aches. What's also very important is to understand that those tablets actually only work to protect your thyroid, so only that organ specifically, and only against radioactive iodine. If there were to be a nuclear explosion, there would probably be other radioactive substances, like, for instance, cesium-134 or cesium-137. In that case, you wouldn't be protected. And this is why it's often recommended that you have to wait to get more information from local authorities to know what exactly is in the air. It's also important to say that in most countries, those tablets are actually not available over the counter. So, for instance, here in France, it's only people who are living in a radius of about 20 kilometers from a nuclear plant that have access to this medication.
Now, another recommendation, of course, is take shelter. Is that still the most effective solution, Julia?
It is indeed. The very first step that you need to take is to try to find shelter, if possible, underground to avoid the radioactive fallout. Also, you have to take off your clothes if you were outside during the explosion, because, as I said, the radioactive material takes 15 minutes to come down. So chances are your clothes are contaminated. And just by taking that top coat, you get rid of 90%, it's estimated 90% of the radioactive material. Also, do not leave your home, even if it's to try to peek outside. Do not open your windows. Do not eat any food coming from outside. Try to favor all of those food that are still sealed and packaged inside of your home. Also, you can take a shower, of course, wash, but only with soap and water. Do not use conditioner, for instance, because it can actually bind radioactive material to your hair. So, Annette, it's nothing uplifting today. Gratefully, we're not there yet, but it's information that's very important nonetheless.